My name is Skyler. I'm 36 years old, living in a cozy apartment on the outskirts of Los Angeles, California. I work as a financial analyst for a bustling tech startup in Silicon Beach, crunching numbers and keeping the books balanced while juggling the demands of home life. No kids, no chaos, just me and my husband, Jackson. He's the same age as me, a charismatic marketing director at a high-end luxury real estate agency downtown. With his sharp suits, confident swagger, and that lingering scent of designer aftershave, he turns heads wherever he goes. To the outside world, I must look like I've got it all. But inside our sleek, modern condo, the air has grown as cold as the Pacific fog rolling in at night. We still share a bed, but it feels more like an invisible wall divides us than a blanket. Dinner conversations have shrunk into clipped sentences, and laughter, once a daily rhythm, now echoes only in my memory. I find myself studying his phone face down on the counter, wondering about the late-night client calls and the perfume I don't own lingering faintly on his shirt. People think silence means peace, but sometimes silence screams the loudest. If you're still listening, we want to sincerely thank you for spending your time with us. Truly means a lot. We'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments and let's see how far this message has reached. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, I highly recommend doing it now so you won't miss any of our upcoming stories. These aren't just ordinary stories. They're filled with meaningful life lessons that can inspire, teach, and stay with you long after the video ends. Hit that subscribe button and join our growing community. Today was meant to be magical, June 12th, our 8th wedding anniversary and Jackson's 36th birthday. I'd taken the afternoon off, battled LA traffic for over an hour to snag his favorite vintage Cabernet from a boutique winery in Malibu, and swung by an upscale butcher in Beverly Hills for prime Kobe beef ribs. I'm no gourmet chef, but I poured my heart into making this dinner unforgettable. I decked out the balcony with twinkling fairy lights, draped a crisp white linen over the table, and polished the crystal glasses to perfection. Custom cake from a trendy patisserie sat chilling in the fridge, vanilla buttercream with a heartfelt inscription, "To Jackson, happy birthday and anniversary. Love always." As I set the final fork in place, I paused, gazing at the glow of the city skyline beyond our balcony. The air smelled faintly of jasmine drifting in from the neighbor's garden, mixing with the savory marinade I'd been basting for hours. My chest swelled with anticipation. This night was supposed to be a reminder of us, who we were, who we still could be. I slipped into the dress Jackson once said made me look like summer bottled in silk, the kind of dress I hadn't worn in years. For a moment, I caught my reflection in the glass doors and allowed myself to hope he'd see me again. Not just a roommate or a shadow moving through the condo. Tonight, I was determined to rekindle something fragile, something precious, before it slipped away completely. By 7 p.m., I slipped into a slinky red dress, spritzed on perfume, and waited. I truly believed he'd show. At 8 o'clock, I lit the candles, their flames dancing in the breeze. By 9 o'clock, I texted, "Waiting for you, babe." No reply. At 9:30, I called, straight to voicemail after a few rings. Then, at exactly 10:35 p.m., a curt email pinged in, "Client crisis. Tuck at the office. We'll reschedule. No sorry, no happy anniversary." I stared at my phone, the candles long extinguished, the cake untouched. Something inside me cracked, a deep, aching shift. That night, I cleared everything away, boxed the beef, dismantled the lights, and scrubbed the table clean. No celebration, no shared laughter. I collapsed into bed around midnight, still in my wrinkled dress, replaying that icy email like a nightmare on loop. It wasn't the first time Jackson bailed late, leaving me aching from the wait. But this felt different, a chilling intuition creeping in like a shadow lengthening across the room. Quiet voice whispered that this wasn't about work or stress or even neglect. This was about distance. Tensional distance. The next morning, I woke to silence. No messages. No apologies. Just the hum of my phone alarm urging me to drag myself to the office. I smeared concealer under my tired eyes, forced on a blazer, and slipped into the commuter current of Los Angeles like a ghost. By noon, unease clawed at me. Still no word. My calls rang out unanswered. Finally, against my better judgment, I dialed his office. The receptionist's voice was hesitant, almost pitying. "I'm sorry, but Mr. Carter isn't with us anymore. He resigned 3 days ago." No forwarding details. I froze. My pen slipped from my fingers, clattering on the desk. Resigned? 3 days ago? My pulse hammered in my ears. Suddenly, all the fragmented moments clicked into a jagged picture. The late nights he swore were networking events, the stiff new colognes, the unexplained charges on our joint card for dinners at restaurants I'd only seen in glossy magazines. He had been rewriting his life, chapter by chapter, while leaving me stuck in the footnotes. I left work early, stumbling through the smog-thick streets of downtown, clutching my purse like it was the only anchor keeping me upright. Back at the condo, I searched for him, clues, notes, something. Closet door hung open, and at first glance everything looked normal. But then I noticed the gaps. A missing row of suits. The expensive watch case empty. His golf clubs gone. He hadn't just skipped dinner. He had staged a quiet exit, erasing himself from the spaces we once shared. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the bare hangers. It was as if someone had torn out half my life and left the jagged edges exposed. I reached for my phone again, desperate, irrational, dialing his number one more time. Voicemail. His voice, warm, familiar, cruelly distant. "Leave a message after the tone." My throat tightened. The words wouldn't come. I ended the call before the beep, dropped the phone beside me, and buried my face in my hands. The truth pressed in, undeniable. Jackson hadn't just been absent. He had been constructing a parallel life, brick by brick, lie by lie, until the foundation of our marriage crumbled beneath my feet. And in that silence, one thought burned through the fog of disbelief. I wasn't just waiting for him anymore. I was waiting to find out who he had become when he left me behind. Racing home through gridlocked freeways, I burst into our condo, the once vibrant space now suffocatingly silent. His favorite Italian loafers were missing from the entryway. "Jackson," I called, heart pounding. In the bedroom, there he was, mid-pack, suitcase gaping with tailored suits, silk ties, and gleaming new Oxfords, outfits screaming escape, not business trip. "What the hell?" I demanded, my voice shaking. He glanced up, detached, like I was an intruder trespassing in my own home. "You're home early." He turned back to the suitcase, neatly folding another crisp shirt. "Where are you going?" "San Diego," he said coolly, without meeting my eyes. "New gig at a coastal development firm." I froze, words catching in my throat. "You quit without telling me?" Silence. Then he slapped a folder onto the nightstand. Papers stared back at me, black ink screaming betrayal, divorce. "Jackson, what is this?" My voice cracked. He finally met my gaze, his eyes steely, unrecognizable. "You're not the wife I need anymore." The floor beneath me seemed to tilt. My chest tightened, panic turning to disbelief. "After everything? I put my career on hold for your promotions, cooked your meals, ignored the red flags like those client texts at 2 a.m. He sneered, his mouth curling with contempt. "You prioritize your job, the place is a mess, and you only cook when it suits you. A real wife doesn't make excuses." My jaw dropped. Rage bubbled up through the shock, scorching my throat. "I work full-time, split the bills, and you waltz in late, already fed from meetings. I never once complained about your wandering eyes at those galas. I stood by you, Jackson. Every time." He zipped his bag with a violent pull, the sound slicing through the room. "I've rented a beachfront place near the job. Starts next week." "Don't fight this." I stumbled back, pressing against the wall for balance. 8 years, and that's it? No sorry, no explanation? His stare was cold, empty. I owe you nothing. The words cut deeper than any blade. Before I could speak again, he shoved past me, suitcase in hand. The door slammed shut behind him like a final verdict, rattling the frames on the wall. I collapsed to the floor, the folder clutched in trembling hands. The legal jargon blurred through my tears. Assets, separation, dissolution. Words that turned a marriage into paperwork. Condo felt cavernous, every shadow pressing down. His scent lingered in the room, but his presence was already gone. I pressed my forehead to my knees, sobs breaking free, raw and guttural. 8 years reduced to a suitcase and a signature. Memories crashed over me in waves. Our wedding vows whispered under fairy lights, the tiny Christmas tree we decorated our first year, the long drives down Pacific Coast Highway with the windows down, his hand warm in mine. I once believed those moments were foundations. Now I realize they were just fragile glass, shattering with the first hard blow. After page until my eyes landed on the cruelest detail. He'd already listed a new address. A beachfront condo in La Jolla. My stomach twisted. He hadn't just planned to leave, he had already moved on. A scream tore from my throat, muffled into the empty room. Trail didn't come in whispers. Came in slammed doors, unsigned apologies, and the echo of footsteps fading down a hall you once thought you'd share forever. That night, sleep never came. Only the haunting question. How long had he been gone before I even noticed? 2 days later, the condo management called. Miss Skyler, lease transfer request from Jackson. He says you're vacating by month's end. No heads up. No conversation. Just abandonment processed like a line item. My hand shook as I held the phone, bile rising in my throat. He hadn't just left me. He was trying to erase me from the home we'd built. In a daze, I tore through his old desk, desperate for answers. Instead, I found receipts, a paper trail of the life I had bankrolled, everything from the leather couch to the smart fridge in my name. He'd taken only clothes and gadgets, the portable tokens of a new chapter, leaving me surrounded by the debris of the old one. Those divorce papers mocked me for 3 days, sitting untouched on the nightstand. But as I stared at them, numb and sleepless, I began to understand. Silence is its own kind of truth. He didn't just fall out of love. He had chosen to abandon me without a backward glance. On Saturday, an email popped up, subject line, Lincoln High Class Reunion. I had RSVP'd months ago, back when I still pictured us arriving arm in arm, the power couple. A rooftop bar in Hollywood, glitzy and loud. First, the thought of going alone felt unbearable. But then I caught sight of my reflection in the mirror, eyes tired but still sharp, posture straighter than I realized. There was resilience there, a quiet defiance. So I dressed up. A sleek black gown hugged my frame, bold red lips drew a line between despair and determination, and I let my hair fall in soft waves. Not for him. For me. The rooftop bar pulsed with laughter, clinking cocktails, and nostalgic stories spun under the neon glow of Los Angeles. I hovered near the edge, the city lights stretching out below until a familiar voice cut through the noise. Skyler? Wow, you haven't changed a bit. I turned, startled. Alex. The drummer from our high school band, older now, with a rugged beard and that same easy smile. He looked both familiar and foreign, a reminder of a simpler time. We found a corner table away from the crowd, the music thrumming like a heartbeat behind us. He told me about his life, 3 years divorced, now raising his 7-year-old son on his own. His words weren't polished or strategic, they were raw, real. He didn't sugarcoat the struggles, but he didn't wallow either. When he asked about Jackson, I didn't flinch. I simply said, divorcing. No explanations, no caveats. Just the truth. Alex nodded, not prying, not pitying. He smoothly pivoted the conversation to music, travel, the absurdity of TikTok dances. His grace in that moment felt like a balm. For the first time in weeks, I laughed. Not a hollow chuckle, but a real laugh that reached my chest. Hours slipped by until the crowd began to thin, the city outside the glass walls glittering like a sea of stars. We hugged goodbye with an ease that surprised me. No expectations, just connection. Driving home along the quiet stretch of freeway, the radio suddenly blared an old Whitney Houston track. "It's not right, but it's okay." The lyrics cracked something inside me, unleashing floods I had dammed up too long. Memories of uneaten dinners, ignored affections, the endless excuses I crafted for his neglect. I saw myself clearly for the first time, a ghost haunting the edges of my own marriage, hoping for scraps of attention, clinging to promises he had stopped keeping years ago. Tears streamed down my face, but they felt cleansing, not crushing. Because beneath the grief was a raw, flickering truth. Jackson may have walked away, but I was still here. Breathing, driving, living, and maybe, just maybe, ready to begin again. That night, I walked back into the condo with different eyes. The silence was no longer suffocating, it was space. Space for me to reclaim. And for the first time since the door had slammed, I believed it might not stay empty forever. Sunday morning, coffee in hand, Jackson called. "Listen soon, pack up." I took a slow sip, letting the bitterness ground me. Calmly, I replied, "You didn't ask if I had a plan?" "You're grown, handle it." I set the mug down, every muscle taut. "Fine. I'll sign. And don't call again, I'm done being your invisible housekeeper." Silence. Then the faint sound of his breath, clipped and dismissive. I hung up before he could break it with another wound. My signature flowed across the papers later that afternoon without a quiver. Just like that, the rotten chapter closed. But endings have a way of disguising themselves as beginnings. A week post-divorce, as I folded laundry in the quiet, my inbox chimed at 10 p.m. subject line, "Proof." The attachment opened with a cold click. A marriage certificate. Groom, Jackson Michael Hayes. Bride, Brooke Landon Whitaker. Date, 1 day after our split. Location, San Diego County. The shock didn't pierce me like I expected. Instead, a numbness spread, hollow but sharp at the edges. My phone lit up, his name flashing across the screen. "Against better judgment," I answered. "Saw it." His voice was smug, oozing triumph. "Remarried. Best decision ever." I held the silence, letting him fill it with his arrogance. "Her name's Brooke. 36. Elegant, stunning, you'd envy her. Only child of the Whitaker real estate empire in La Jolla. They gifted us a villa overlooking the ocean. And the job? VP title thanks to her connections." "So that's why the rush," I said, my tone steady, even clinical. "Partly. But honestly, couldn't stay with someone who neglected home for spreadsheets." I chuckled softly, the sound bitter but controlled. "And Brooke? She doesn't work?" "She chose family. We're expecting a boy 3 months along." Each word landed like a blade, but strangely, I didn't bleed. I felt only emptiness, like the grief had burned itself out and left ashes in its place. "Congratulations," I whispered flatly. I ended the call before his gloating could infect the silence again. Afterward, I sat at my laptop, replaying his words. Brooke Whitaker. The name echoed. It rang a bell. Instagram. I typed her name with trembling fingers. Her profile gleamed with curated perfection. Flawless brunette waves, emerald eyes that sparkled under filters, radiant smile framed by designer gowns. She looked like someone out of a glossy magazine, a woman sculpted for admiration. But scrolling deeper, I froze. Tagged photo from years back. Brooke wasn't Brooke. She was Brittany Landon. I blinked hard, my pulse racing. High school. Brittany. The awkward girl with stringy hair and acne-scarred cheeks, her eyes slightly too close, her jaw uneven. The one who avoided the cafeteria, who always trailed at the edges of group photos, who endured whispers and cruel laughter. Kids called her Bug Eyes Brittany. She'd been the ghost of Lincoln High, present but unseen, a target more than a peer. And yet, in that wedding picture beneath the perfect nose and symmetrical jaw, I recognized her. The same subtle overbite she'd been mocked for, the faint glint of pain behind the green eyes, now masked as allure. I grabbed my phone, fingers flying. "Mia, remember Brittany Landon?" Seconds later, bubbles popped. Totally. She disappeared after graduation. Word was she got a scholarship to fashion school in New York. Full overhaul, nose job, eyes, jaw, even skin treatments. Reinvented herself completely. I heard she used to latch onto wealthy investors, one married guy in particular. Always scheming, always aiming high. Then she came back west with some gallery gig. I stared at the message, heart thudding. Clicked. Jackson hadn't found true love. He'd found his mirror. Two people, hiding behind facades, feeding off appearances, rewriting their pasts like bad drafts. Jackson, forever insecure under the bravado, desperate for validation. Brittany, now Brooke, forever haunted by the bullied girl, desperate to be admired, to climb, to prove she could belong. They deserved each other. But that realization didn't erase the sting. What cut deepest wasn't the speed of his betrayal, but the fact that he had scripted me out of his story without hesitation. 8 years together, erased in a weekend. My sacrifices, my patience, my loyalty, all overwritten by a shiny wedding hashtag and a villa by the ocean. I shut the laptop, pressing my palms against my eyes. Memories of high school bled into the present. Brittany ducking into bathroom stalls, kids sneering, me watching from afar but never intervening. Guilt rippled through me. I had never joined in, but I had never stood up either. Maybe her reinvention was revenge in disguise, a way of proving she could outrun the shadows. And Jackson? He had simply been her ladder. The irony was suffocating. He had accused me of neglect, of failing as a wife, yet he married a woman whose worth in his eyes was tied not to love, but to lineage and legacy. He didn't want a partner. He wanted a prop. I walked to the balcony, the city lights flickering like scattered diamonds. The night air wrapped around me, cool and steady. For the first time, I didn't feel crushed under the weight of what I'd lost. Instead, I felt clarity harden inside me. I wasn't the ghost anymore. Jackson and Brooke could bury themselves in their performance, their curated empire. But I had something far more dangerous than bitterness: freedom. Freedom to write a story that wasn't built on someone else's shadow. Freedom to stop excusing, stop shrinking, stop waiting by a table set for someone who never intended to arrive. Later that night, I drafted a message to Mia, thinking about showing up at the next reunion, this time as myself, not as Jackson's wife, not as anyone's shadow, just me. Her reply came fast, punctuated with emojis. Yes, do it. Honestly, you've always been the strongest out of all of us. Took me forever to see it, but it's true. I smiled faintly. Strength. The word felt foreign, but not unwelcome. As I set my phone aside, I thought of Whitney Houston's song again. It's not right, but it's okay. Maybe the lyrics weren't about survival after all. Maybe they were about reclaiming power. And for the first time in years, I believed I could. Nearly a year later, Jackson's shadow had thinned into something faint, almost transparent, like smoke dissolving into sea air. My Santa Monica loft had become more than an address. It was a sanctuary. Whitewashed walls, sunlight spilling through tall windows, and the faint hum of ocean waves drifting in each morning. I biked to the office when I felt like it, took long coffee breaks without guilt, and learned to cook for pleasure rather than expectation. Freedom had texture now. It wasn't loud or defiant, just steady like sand warming under bare feet. Alex entered that rhythm softly, without pressure or pretense. Some evenings we strolled along the shore, his son darting ahead to collect shells while we lingered behind, talking about books, work, or simply nothing. Unlike Jackson's need for constant control, Alex carried a gentle ease. He never asked about my schedule or pressed me to define us. He just showed up, punctual, present, genuine. That, I realized, was worth more than champagne anniversaries or rooftop views. Then, one crisp autumn morning, life reminded me that Jackson's story wasn't done. I was tucked in a corner booth at my favorite coffee shop, laptop open, steam rising from a caramel latte. My phone buzzed, Mia's name flashing. I smiled, expecting a meme or some nostalgic high school memory. Instead, her message jolted me. "Heard about Jackson?" I braced myself, sipping slowly before replying. "No." "Fill me in." Her text arrived in a cascade. "Brooke's lawyering up for divorce. He's been cheating, junior exec at her firm. 3 months. She caught him but stayed for the kid. Now she's had enough." I stared at the words, unsurprised yet oddly hollow. Jackson, the man who couldn't keep promises, couldn't even keep vows to his shiny new wife. Predictable. Mia's follow-up sealed the sting. Their son's nearly 3. Kids in preschool already teasing him. "Your mom's face is fake." Parents talk, children repeat. Brooke's unraveling. I set my phone down, letting the noise of the cafe blur into the background. Images flooded in. Brooke, sculpted jaw and emerald eyes, recoiling from her own child. Jackson chasing validation through affairs like a thirsty man gulping salt water. They had built their castle on illusions, altered bodies, borrowed wealth, curated appearances. But castles built on sand collapse with the tide. Pity rose, not for Jackson or Brooke, but for their son, thrust into a life where truth itself was treated like a blemish to conceal. That child carried unvarnished honesty in his DNA, yet both parents tried to mask him as though he were defective merchandise. Children don't ask to be born into facades. They ask for love, unconditional and unfiltered. I remembered Jackson's cruel words, accusing me of being a failed wife too focused on spreadsheets to nurture. And yet here he was, a father incapable of holding his own son without judgment. The irony stung, but it also liberated me. His failures no longer had weight in my world. They belonged squarely to him. Mia called soon after. Her voice brimmed with both outrage and disbelief. "Can you imagine, Sky? After everything, ditching you, parading Brooke, now he's the one being tossed aside." I chuckled softly, not out of spite, but from recognition. He's always been running from himself. Brooke just gave him a shinier track. Mia sighed. "And that poor boy. Genetics don't care about Botox." I nodded, even though she couldn't see. Truth always surfaces. You can change your face, your job title, your address, but DNA, character, integrity? They reveal themselves eventually. When the call ended, I gazed out at the Pacific, sunlight glinting across endless blue. A strange calm settled over me. For years, I had twisted myself into knots to keep Jackson happy, ignoring the fractures, excusing the neglect. But time had vindicated me. Not in a triumphant, parade-worthy way, but in the quiet assurance that I had chosen authenticity over illusion. That evening, Alex and I walked along the beach. His son skipped stones into the water, laughter echoing through the salt-tinged air. Alex glanced at me, sensing my distraction. "Long day?" he asked. "Just news from the past. Good or bad?" I smiled faintly. "Neither. Just confirmation that what's gone should stay gone." He squeezed my hand, no questions asked. That gesture said more than any explanation could. Later, tucked into bed, I scrolled past Jackson's name still blocked in my contacts. No urge to unblock, no curiosity to check his social media. His world could spin, crumble, or explode. It wasn't my orbit anymore. Instead, I open my journal, scribbling a single line. Freedom is when their chaos no longer rattles your peace. I closed the book, turned off the lamp, and drifted to sleep, the ocean murmuring outside my window. Jackson had built a life of mirrors, chasing admiration, terrified of the unfiltered reflection. I had built a life of substance, small, imperfect, real. And as the tide shifted, I finally understood. The past wasn't my burden. It was his cage. And I was already free. Reflecting, 8 years of marriage, abrupt betrayal, and unmasked facades, I am not bitter. Oddly, I feel grateful. That wreckage forced me to strip away illusions and return to something raw, something true. No forgiveness is owed, no revenge required, just the steady rhythm of living authentically. Appearances deceive, but time always unmasks what lies beneath. In rebuilding, I discovered truths I wish I'd known earlier. 5 lessons anchor me now, and perhaps they'll resonate with you too. Lesson 1. Silence speaks louder than excuses. When someone repeatedly chooses absence, no apology can bridge the gap. Pay attention not to their promises, but to their patterns. Lesson 2. You are not defined by abandonment. Being left behind is not proof of your unworthiness, it's evidence of their inability to honor love. Release the shame that was never yours to carry. Lesson 3. Authenticity outlives appearances. Botox fades, titles shift, wealth can vanish. But integrity, kindness, and presence endure. Build on that foundation, not on facades. Lesson 4. Peace comes from within, not from others. No relationship, no ring, no anniversary dinner can replace the quiet confidence of knowing who you are. Guard that peace as fiercely as treasure. Lesson 5. Rebirth often begins in ruins. What feels like the end may be the doorway to a life richer, freer, and more honest than you dared to imagine. Pain clears the path for clarity. Today, I walk lighter. I find beauty in mornings unhurried, in conversations real and unfiltered, in love that asks nothing but truth. I don't envy those still trapped in illusions. They are living in cages built of mirrors. My freedom came not from revenge, but from refusing to step back inside mine. So if you're listening, wondering whether you too can rise after betrayal, trust me, you can. The wreckage may feel unbearable now, but it can be the soil where your new self takes root. If this story touched you, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. More stories of resilience and truth are waiting, and who knows, the next chapter might be yours.